Welcome to the Rex Andrews Show. Glad to have you today with us. If you are a first-time listener, welcome to the conversation. And of course, I am not ashamed to beg, so I've got a caller on today, so I'm going to say I'm a well-dressed beggar. So if you like what we're doing, please give us those 5 stars. It helps us in the podcast distribution systems around the world. And if you are a returning listener, I want to say thank you because of you and our great guests. And we have another one of those today. We have cracked the top 10% of the fastest growing podcasts in the world. That's quite an accomplishment for you folks because you're the ones that are listening, because there's over 850,000 active podcasts in the marketplace today. So people have a lot of choices. So welcome and thank you. Glad to have you along on the ride. Now, it's pretty exciting. Our listeners across the globe, we have listeners in 32 countries, in over 400 cities, on 6 continents. And if I could figure out a way to market to penguins, and probably more important, how to help them recharge their cell phones, we'd probably have listeners on all 7 continents. All right, so today we've got a great listener, guest for us. I'm excited to bring him there to the show. Don't forget to stop by the show website. And I tell people to do this for one main reason. We're going to talk about a lot of things today in this interview, but it's generally only the tip of the iceberg because the people I bring on the show are interesting people doing interesting things. So on the show website, you'll have profiles from everybody who's been on the show, our current guests, and those come up and coming. So you can take a look and see information about the people, links to their businesses, their profiles, a lot of information. So please stop by the Rex Andrews Show when you get a chance. All right. Well, as you know, the show is about stories, people's stories. I have too many interests for just one lifetime, but my biggest problem is around the corner, every corner, there's another discovery. And I have one of those discoveries with us today. So I would like to introduce to you folks pretty interesting cat. And he's a really interesting guy. He's an educator, and I would kind of classify him as a lifetime learner. But he was a late in life PhD, which you don't see at age 58 getting your PhD. That's pretty interesting because at that point in time, yeah, what else you got to prove to anybody, right? He's a certified trainer. He has over 6 books that he's credited to. So 1 he's written and 5 others he's co-authored. So he's a writer and an author, a serial entrepreneur. And if I were to just throw a label on this guy, I would say a teacher and coach. I mean, this is somebody who spends his life helping other people. And he's not done, I'll tell you that. He's an interesting thing. So I'd like to welcome to the show, Don Cote. Don, how are you today?
Wonderful, Rex. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on the show. Now, where are you dialing in from today?
I'm in fabulous Las Vegas.
Viva Las Vegas, that's right.
Where it'll be 96 degrees in beginning of May.
Oh my goodness, and I have snow on the ground just outside of Boulder. We're having a very wet spring, so I guess we're a big contrast there. All right, so Don, and as we've listened to the show's all about the stories. Success doesn't fall out of the sky. It just doesn't, okay? It doesn't fall out of the sky and hit people, and a lot of people are always wondering, well, how do I do this? How do I get to these levels? So we tell the stories about how people get places. So I want to go back, and this is a long list, so don't feel bad. I'll remind you the questions. We want to know where you were born. Where did you grow up? Now that could be different because I had a guest on the show who moved 63 times before the age of 15. So that's pretty interesting. So where'd you grow up is important because that's an environment contributor. We want to know about if you have any siblings, and then if you have siblings, if any of them survived your harassment, that type of thing. We want to know what your parents did growing up because parental influence is huge. It can be very supportive, or it can be an example in life of, hey, I don't want to be anything like that, okay? Also want to know what you did as a kid growing up in your formative years and stuff, what were your interests, whether it was sports or theater, computers, dance, shoplifting. Don't laugh at the shoplifting. I had a guest who had been on the show who by the age of 15 was a car thief, and he had progressed. So we always want to know those types of things. We'll hopscotch through your education, and then we'll move up to some pivot points in your life of kind of made you who you are today. and then what you're focusing on today. I know you have a lot of things in the hopper, as we discussed off air. So don't worry about the length of list. I'll come back at you if we forget any of those. But Don, let's get it started. Where were you born?
Massachusetts.
Okay.
Both sets of grandparents were from Montreal, Canada. And so my parents were first generation here. And until I was 5, I couldn't speak English. I only spoke Canadian French. And they
Wow.
thought I was going to have trouble in school. So they stopped speaking French and only spoke English. I'm still mad at them for that because I lost my French. But
Okay.
I was French Canadian, but in Massachusetts.
What part of Massachusetts did you grow up in?
North Shore, so right on the border of New Hampshire, a little tiny microscopic town. When I grew up there, it was it's called Tingsboro, after Colonel Ting, who moved there in the 1600s.
Oh, wow. You know, I used to live in Connecticut and I loved it because so much rich history back there.
Yeah.
You'd go to a cemetery and see graves from the 1600s and stuff. So it's a different world than out west. You don't see anything like that in Vegas, that's for sure.
No.
All right. So where did you grow up there then in Massachusetts?
I did. I started in school in Tingsboro, and then we moved to Tewksbury, and weird names in New England, kind of like England, right?
Sure.
And then back to Tingsboro. So back and forth, my dad would buy a crappy old house and he'd move us into it and he'd fix it up and then sell it and move us into a little nicer neighborhood, but still a crappy house. But I just all in that region, the north part of the northeast part of Massachusetts.
Okay. So what did your dad do? It sounded like he flipped a little bit of houses. What all was he involved with when you were growing up?
Like so many people, he really didn't have any plan for his life. His came from a big family. They had 8 kids, and as uncommon in those days, his parents got divorced. So I ended up in an orphanage, and he said, "Hell no, I won't go." And he ran away at 14, never finished 7th grade. And he was born in 1933 when the Depression was ending.
Sure.
But he ran away and he lived on the streets. And we don't know anything about that period. He never would talk about it. But at 21, he bought his first house. Crappy little house, crappy neighborhood, $2,500. And it was, if you ever watched Gomer Pyle, those Quonset huts.
Yeah.
It was Quonset hut. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. It probably was all of 800 square feet, but he bought it for $2,400 and sold it for $6,000 5 years later.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know how he learned how to do things, but he knew everything about plumbing, and heating, and siding, and roofing, and all that kind of stuff. And I remember at 7 years old, I was always underfoot, and I would say to him, I would say, I just want to help. So he'd send me to get things. Go get the hammer. Go get dig it out from underneath his feet.
Yeah.
By the time I got to high school, we had 5 homes, never more than one, but I learned everything about construction. And I remember hundreds of times Rex asking him this question, "Dad, how did you learn how to do this?" And his answer was always the same: "I didn't. We're figuring it out right now." So I had this uncommon, this example, really a young, impressionable boy with this example of somebody with really unlimited confidence in himself to do anything. And I just grew up thinking that's how it is. You just figure it out. And so we talked a little off air about being a serial entrepreneur. And that's how I became a serial entrepreneur. I just was like, I'll just figure it out.
Well, that's amazing. My father was a lot like that. He grew up on a ranch, but nobody taught him anything. They didn't have any access to education. Right. And this is way before YouTube. You just can't go out there and do a search for a DIY, video. So that's great. How about your mom? What did your mom do?
There was a lot of times where he said, "Crap, that didn't work." And we
did
it. Yeah, mom was mostly stay at home. She was a loving mom. My family wasn't terribly affectionate, but they loved us for sure. I've got 2 younger sisters. I'm the oldest. Okay. And we were always poor. Dad never made more than $7,000 a year in his life. He was totally disabled at 39 and died at 52. But so we never had any money, but we always had tons of Christmas presents. Mom would wrap socks separately. So we had plenty of
things to unwrap.
The tree. Refrigerator always had food. When Dad became disabled, we couldn't get him on disability for 5 years. Difficult. And we ended up on welfare. And so the refrigerator was full, but it was mostly USDA food.
Yeah.
Struggle.
Government cheese, government peanut butter, you know, the
How
whole
did
thing.
you?
Yep, that's for sure. So at that era, there were a lot of people, you know, back, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago, a lot of people that were like that. And, but we didn't know any different. I came from a family of meager means also. And, but you didn't know any different, you know, unless you had exposure to people who had a lot of money. That was just the way people lived and stuff. So much different than the world today. So are you close with your sisters?
They live back in Massachusetts. Well, one of them lives in Massachusetts, one of them lives in Arizona, but they're the other one that moved to Arizona just recently. But I'm very close to them. I just don't visit with them very much physically.
Sure. Well, that's good. Okay. So tell me, how did you spend your time as a kid? What were you what interests did you have? What did you do?
Kicked off our shoes in the spring when we got out of school and reluctantly put them back on in the fall. Very, very rural area. My mom would kick us out first thing in the morning, and we were supposed to be in before dark, but I climbed trees and built forts, and at 9 I wanted a mini bike really bad, so I started a little shoe shine business so I could get the money, and then I was pretty mobile, and the final house my dad was able to buy, his dream was always have a house on a lake, and he finally bought that house. We were a family of 5, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom cottage. And
Wow.
so it really wasn't adequate. And he had plans for fixing it up, but then he got sick. So I did the entire rehab during my high school years, going into high school. So that's where I spent a lot of my time, nights and weekends, he had a project, but his body just didn't work. His mind was fine, but his body didn't work anymore. So he'd point and say, we want to do that over there. I already knew how to do it. So now that house, that 2-bedroom, 1-bath, is a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom, full in-law apartment in the basement, 2-car garage, 2nd floor on the house. He paid $14,900 in the early, let's see, that in the mid 70s, and today it's worth $650,000.
Wow.
But that's what I did with my time. I did projects.
Okay. So your sport was home improvements.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, actually. And so grateful for it because Dad drilled it into my head. He said, son, you are not the sharpest tool in the shed. We always had a shed. I knew what that meant.
Sure.
And pay attention. I'm teaching you how to feed your family and put a roof over their head. So I just knew I needed to be in real estate.
Okay, well, that's cool. So once you got out of high school, what was your next hop?
Yeah, I barely made it through. I was a C student. I was on a good day. There really weren't a lot of good days. Some would say I had a learning disability, but I was just eager to get out of school to go to work because Dad had taught me a good work ethic. And I started a construction business. I did a lot of rehabbing and things like that. I started a commercial cleaning company. We had lots of banks and office buildings and things like that. So I did a lot of those kinds of businesses. I took jobs from every so often to try to get the funding to be able to start the next business, really. But my first vehicle in 10th grade was a pickup truck, so I could do odd jobs. And I continued to start and grow businesses, after that.
Boy, we have a lot in common. I was do whatever you could to make some extra money, and then ended up getting a pickup that my father helped me get, and that started me off and went from there. So
Cool.
That's fantastic. So did you get to a point where you were sort of fatigued or got to some success with your own little projects and project type work? I mean, what was the next hop?
Yeah. It was really real estate. So I bought my
Okay.
first home in 1980. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, a 5-bedroom, 2-bath. I paid $49,000, sold it for $117,000. Then I started buying multifamilies and doing the rehabs on those. So in the 80s, I just you could fall out of bed and make money in real estate. So I ended up with making a huge portfolio, but then 1989 hit. And the crash of 1989, 1991, maybe a lot of your listeners weren't even on the planet at that point, but it was pretty ugly. The real estate crash was pretty ugly. And my dad had never seen a real estate crash in his lifetime. And so he never prepared me for that. He taught me how to make money in real estate, but not how to keep it. And so I lost everything. I lost all my real estate. I filed bankruptcy. I had family at that point. I have two children. And so I had two young children. I went through a nasty divorce and I ended up homeless. And I was living in the backseat of my BMW for quite a while.
Wow. So you were completely upside down when this hit.
Oh, yeah.
Ouch, 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 ouch. Okay. You had
Turned
been
out
so.
to be the best experience of my life, though.
Yes, I can relate to that. I won't tell that story today, but I can relate to that too. Massive loss is always a good gain at some point in time.
Yeah.
So,
Subtitle of my first book, it's called Life Works, and it talks about how life works. But the subtitle is How I Lost Everything and Found My Life's Purpose.
yeah, it's always a struggle like that. So, were you emotionally devastated through the bankruptcy? I mean, where was your head at this time?
In a very dark place. So I spent a lot of nights in the backseat of my BMW in the middle of the night, in the middle of New England, in the middle of the winter, pretty cold, and in rest areas mostly. And I would shower in hotels. So I would go to the hotel, walk through the lobby into the gym area, and then wave at the people at the front desk with my duffel bag like I was somebody special.
Right.
And then that's how I would, get my shower for the day. But I had quite a long pity party. I asked myself, I call unanswerable circular questions like, why me? What did I do wrong? I'm an honest guy, working hard, trying to take care of my family. Doesn't make sense. It's unfair, blah, blah, blah. And then one day I just realized that wasn't getting me anywhere. And I pulled up my big boy panties and I reached out to a guy who was a mentor of mine early in my real estate investing career. I hadn't talked to him in 10 years. So it took a lot of courage because I had kind of grown out of him, and reached out and said, hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee? And he said yes.
Nice.
Everything turned around.
Everything turned around. So what was your first milestone on this path to success? You went and had this pivotal meeting. Okay. Yep. But pivotal meetings don't make, they don't pay the bills. They don't put food on the table. That's true. They give you motivation. So what was the next thing that you were doing that you started to build back some income?
Well, the meeting didn't go at all like I planned. I had this, my dad always said, unfulfilled expectations, great disappointment. And so my expectation was I was just going to say, hey, show me how, take me under your wing again, show me how to do this again, like you did the first time, because the game had changed, all the rules had changed. And the first question he asked me, he said, have you ever read the book Think and Grow Rich? And I said, well, yeah, sure. In 1979, I'd gotten in Amway and I read the book.
Sure.
And he said, how many times have you read it? I said, well, once. How many times do you have to read a book? And he said, apparently more than once because you missed it. He said, all the answers you're looking for are in that book. Thanks for the coffee. I've got to go. Really short, very painful meeting. And I remember sitting there sort of, in the daze, just watched him walk out. I don't know how long it was before I actually came to and stood up and kind of walked to my car, not knowing what that felt like. There was just a great abyss there in front of me. And then about halfway home, I thought, well, he's rich and I'm still poor. Maybe that's a clue. Let me get my hands on this book. And I went to Barnes and Noble and I read the book and I read it cover to cover and said, damn, I must have missed it. And I read it again and I read it again. And because he told me, he pulled a Columbo just before he left, he turned around, he said, hey, if you don't get it, just read it again.
Yeah.
And so I did. And then I didn't really understand what the process was. I believe the universe gives us opportunities and free will gives us the opportunity to take them or not. And so as I continued to read this book, I developed what turned out to be a 3-step system for me. I didn't create it. I didn't invent it. I discovered that there are 3 steps to creation. You first got to get a picture in your mind of what you want.
Mm-hmm.
You got to put that on a piece of paper. I'll call it a blueprint if you are building a building, or a business plan if you're making a business, or if you're making a cake, it's called a recipe.
Yeah.
And so I put this recipe together for myself, this blueprint about I would do this first and that and this and that. And eventually, step after step, I would get to the third, the outcome that I wanted. So the first step is the vision. The second step is the blueprint. And the third step is just take action. We talked about both of us being contractors. Somebody has an idea for a kind of house. It's a gambrel. It's a Cape Cod or whatever. They create a blueprint, you build it, and now they have the dream come true. And so I did that for myself. And some of my friends started saying, hey, will you show me? And so I did. And then their friends asked what they were doing and what I show them. And for about 30 some odd years, I taught people all over the world that 3-step system.
Wow.
And really enjoyed the heck out of myself doing it, because when you can, my dad always said, help one other person be successful and you're successful. So more than one is a huge success.
Now, I forgot to do this earlier. I normally do this a little earlier in the interview, but please give out a website or a social link that you have people get in touch with you today. Obviously,
sure.
We'll have it on the show website, but people like to follow along.
Sure. Yeah, I'm on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn, but you can go to doncotefitness.com, DONCOTE fitness.com, and you can reach me through the website.
Fantastic. So, is this when you started getting involved in writing the books, or was this later when you were in fitness? Lead me to that.
Yeah, sure. So it just kind of organically began to grow, and I never turned it into a business. It was just sort of my way to say thank you to the universe, to give back. And so I only what I charged to do these, what turned out to be like a 3-day workshop, was just enough to cover the cost of whatever room we were renting and food, if we were providing food and that kind of stuff. We did it in bed and breakfast and things like that. So it was just a really nice social kind of event. And then many of those people from 1996 when I first started, 1995 when I first started, are still friends of mine today, but they've accomplished dreams that they say they never would have had they not known about the steps to success that I showed them. And so I never did actually turn into a business, but someone would graduate from my class in New England, and then they would end up in Tennessee, and I get a call and they would say, hey, I've got 12 people that want to do your class. I'd fly in for the weekend, I'd do the class, and then I'd go, somebody else would be in Jacksonville, Florida, and then somebody else in LA and whatever. So I did that for quite a while, but I was making money in real estate. I got back into real estate right away.
Right.
I found a mentorship program that I became the star student, and then they eventually hired me to be their #1 speaker. And I spent 7 years, 45 weekends a year, teaching a 2-day wealth building class all over North America.
Wow.
It was exhausting, but it was fun.
What year did you start doing that?
That was in, so I actually retired, came off the road in 2007. So it was 2000 when I started.
2000. Fantastic. Yeah, you were on the uphill climb at that point in time before the next bubble hit, right?
Yeah. Well, what ended up happening there is in 2005, I had met a young man at Gold's Gym that had only had a high school diploma, but he had worked his way up from front desk to GM, but he was struggling to get membership. And so I said, here, let me show you how to get lots of members. And so I picked up the phone and I started making some phone calls to the Chamber of Commerce list. And I left a message for a guy one day. His name was Ben Lyons. And I'm in the gym and I'm having a coffee. I said to the general manager, let's have coffee. I'll go next door and get it. So I called in my order for sandwiches and coffee. And I walked in and I walked up to the counter and I said, you have an order for Don Cote? And I get a tap on the shoulder. And it's tough to be shorter than me. I'm 5'6", and this guy was like 5'4". And he taps me on the shoulder and I looked down at him and he said, you're Don Cote. I said, yeah. He said, you left a message for me yesterday. My name is Ben Lyons. Do you have a minute? Can you sit with me? And so I went over and sat with him for a minute and he said, I don't really get it. Like you made the phone call, but like, you don't work at the gym. What's going on? I said, I'm just helping the kid out. He's a nice kid. Yeah. He said, yeah, I kind of thought. He said, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a full-time real estate investor. I've got 2 full crews rehabbing houses in Baltimore. I was living north of Baltimore at the time.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm in the mortgage business. Coincidence. He said, here's my card. Call my assistant, make an appointment. I'd love to show you what I have. I started off my career as a rehabber, just like you. And, and I designed my mortgage program for people just like us. So serendipity, I called as I walked back to the across the parking lot. I called and made the appointment. Long story short, I went in to see him and he hired me to be the vice president of his company because he wanted to expand nationally. So in 2006, I opened 56 branches in 42 states and hired and trained 280 mortgage officers.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. Holy cow. So how long did you stay doing that then?
Well, because I lived through 89, 90, 91, I saw the signposts, and
Yeah.
I predicted the 2008 crash was going to happen in April of 2007.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be in the mortgage business at that point. I knew it was going to be a bloodbath and somebody was going to go to jail or something.
Yeah.
And so I went in January of 2007, I went into my boss and I said, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that you didn't hire the competition, you didn't train the competition. I'm leaving the banking business. I want to write a book. I want to get my PhD. I want to do more speaking. I was actually speaking on the weekends and working at the bank during the week. So I don't remember 2006 at all. I took my division from being upside down, being in the red. We did $516 million in mortgages, which sounds like a lot, but we weren't countrywide, but it was from below zero, from sub-zero was pretty good.
Sure.
And it was a fantastic experience. I really, really enjoyed it. But I left the business and I called a friend of mine who was a auctioneer. And I had 30 units 30 buildings that I owned that were waiting for rehab because my crews were so busy I couldn't get to all of them.
Sure.
And I just wanted out of the business. So I called my friend who was the auctioneer, and on Saturday mornings in downtown Baltimore, he would stand on the stoop of a building and auction it off. And I said, I want you to auction all 30 of these this weekend. That was on a Tuesday. On Thursday, he called me and he said, somebody wants to buy all 30 units. Will you sell it as a package? Well, I had acquired those through tax lien investing at about $500 a building. And I knew this guy knew that I had acquired them really inexpensively. And they were just shells. We were going to rehab them.
Sure.
And he said, this guy wants to buy all of them. And I thought he was going to give me like $1,000 a piece for them. And I wasn't really, I thought I could get maybe $2,000 a piece for them. And so I said, well, what's his offer? And he said he wants to give you $10,000 a piece. I said, is this guy for real? Does he really have the money? He said, yeah. I said, it's Thursday. Can he have the money in escrow by tomorrow? Because Saturday I want to auction him. He's got to have it in the he said,
yeah.
He's good for it. And we sold Friday afternoon. I sold all 30 units for $10,000 a piece.
Nice.
And I moved to Galveston, Texas, because I wanted to be on the ocean, and I had already lived on the ocean and the Atlantic, and so I'd be like, okay, now the Gulf, and now it's the Pacific.
How fantastic.
Yeah. And that happened just before Katrina, right after Katrina, because Katrina happened in August. And in January, I was driving through the affected area across Lake Pontchartrain. Yeah. And I've never seen anything. 180 mile an hour winds, huge buildings that everything was a skeleton. So a 30 unit apartment building, nothing but 2x4s.
Yeah.
How does that happen? It's crazy. So that was an amazing experience. So I got to New Orleans, and there were people had the businesses opened again. It's January rather. They had the businesses open selling T-shirts. I bought so many T-shirts and hats, and then I just gave them to everybody because I was just so impressed with their resilience.
Yeah.
And that's what my PhD is in. I wanted to figure out what is it that causes people to keep getting up no matter how many times they get knocked down, because that was me. But I noticed that wasn't normal. Most people don't do that. And so my PhD is in behavioral science and mostly in behavior modification, how you change your habits from how you change habits that don't serve you to habits that do serve you.
Wow, that's fantastic. So how long did it take you to get your doctorate finished?
Thought it was going to be 3 years, turned out to be 7, but you just never give up.
That's right. Well, you never fail unless you quit.
Right.
So
it's the only way that's the only way to guarantee failure is to quit.
That's right. That's you never hit the balls that you don't swing at. So
it goes back to my dad giving me that sort of uncommon self-confidence way of being. He was just that all the time.
Yeah, I understand that perspective. My dad was the same way. He was always a teacher. We were always out on the ranch doing something, figuring out something. We could cherry rig just about anything under the sun, kind of stuff. And a lot of things didn't work. So you tried again. You tried something different, weld it over here instead of over there. So that's great. So what are you working on currently? I mean, you've done quite a bit of things, and then you were actually a personal trainer for a while then too, right? As far as a certified trainer.
Yeah, I had a couple of practice marriages and got all the mistakes out of the way apparently. And
Okay.
when I was traveling for those 7 years, I stayed single on purpose because I really didn't. I said if I ever get another relationship, I really want it to work out. And I knew it was me. I didn't have the skills. And so I spent that 7 years kind of trying to figure out like who I needed to be such that my next relationship would work. And when I came off the road, a friend of mine lived in Vegas. Weather was nice here, so I moved here, hung out with him for a while, and put my big toe in the water. Got on Plenty of Fish, and met my wife. And we got married. It'll be 10 years this July that we've been married. One angel fell from heaven, and I found her. And she thinks I'm cute, and I'm not fixing her eyes anytime soon.
We both have the same haircut today, so
yes. Yeah, I see my barber in the shower every morning.
that's right. So, wow, what a great success story! A online dating success story. Those are not as common as you think.
No, but again, it's a tribute to her. I think I figured a little bit out, but she really had it. She really had it nailed, and the reason why was when I met her, she was the wedding planner at Caesar's Palace.
Oh my goodness!
And it wasn't uncommon for her to do a dozen weddings on a Saturday.
Wow.
And so we met with a lot of brides and grooms, and that's a perspective that a lot of people just don't have. And so she kind of figured out compatibility, and she could predict whether they were going to make it or not, pretty much. And so when I met her, I asked her 1,000 questions to see if there was compatibility. I refused to hold her hand until I was sure because she was so beautiful. And I was afraid I'm going to get hooked emotionally and it's not going to work out again and I'm going to be devastated. So we spent 3 days together just having coffee and lunch and dinner and just talking and stuff. And a week later, I gave her a diamond. And 5 weeks later, we were married.
Wow.
And every day, this is not an exaggeration, Rex, every day gets better.
Good for you. There are not a lot of stories like that. That's almost one that brings tears to your eyes. Somebody that a lot of times people in life would say, oh my goodness, to do something that quick, it's not going to last, but 10 years and still rolling. So that's great.
Sure. She's a relationship expert, although she doesn't practice that. People come to her for that kind of advice. But she ended up teaching wedding planning, and she became the president of the International Wedding Planners Association chapter here in Vegas. Of course, Vegas is the wedding capital of the world, and Caesar's Palace is the crown jewel of the Strip. And so you just don't get any higher in that industry. And after 17 years, she was burned out. She came home one day and she said, so I'm wondering what it would be like to go to work in sneakers instead of high heels. And I said, well, I'll bite. What does that mean? She said, well, I've done 2,500 weddings and not one bride has ever been happy with the way they look and they feel in their wedding dress. It's been thousands of dollars for their pictures and never shown them to anybody. And if I was a personal trainer, I could help them get in shape. Mm-hmm. Being an entrepreneur, I'm a certified business coach as well with Tony Robbins. And so I've coached hundreds and hundreds of, actually probably more like thousands of business owners. And I said to her, that's either the best idea I've ever heard or the worst, but I'm not sure. I got to do a little research. Turns out it was a terrible idea. But she was determined that she was going to get certified as a personal trainer, and she did. And then the brides aren't motivated, and if they are, it's just until they say I do, and then they're done. So it doesn't make a really good clientele. But the people there's 100,000. Well, there was before the pandemic, 100,000 people that work on the Strip, and they live really bad lifestyles. They drink too much, they eat really rich food, they work terrible hours, they're in tremendous stress, they smoke, it's just horrible. So they've got high blood pressure, they've got cholesterol problems, they've got, the type 2 diabetes. So she started working with industry people and just fell in love with that, getting people in shape. She had told me one of her, this morning over coffee, she's like, oh, Stephanie lost 70 pounds working with me in the last 6 months.
Okay.
Right? Oh yeah, it's really common. And so when she said she wanted to be a trainer, I said, well, I've got a lot of time on my hands. I'll be your study buddy. So I just wanted to support her. I never thought I'd do anything with it. But as I got to be, I'm 63 now. As I went through my executive career, I developed the executive pot belly and was really overweight. And I had this amazing excuse that, I traveled over 1 million miles. You can't eat well on the road. There's no time to exercise, blah, 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 blah. And so I decided I was going to go through my transformation, and I did. And in my retirement, I decided I spent the last 30 years helping people to develop wealth, and the next 30 years to get their health back. People in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. But I just can't seem to get away from helping people with all of their dreams, not just their health and fitness dreams. So most of my coaching clients for my fitness business are also people that are entrepreneurs, want to start or grow their business, and maybe have relationship issues and things like that. So I'm a life coach disguised as a health and fitness coach.
So looking back on all your years and all the different businesses you've been in and experiences, I mean, you've done corporate, you've done entrepreneur, you've done training. What's the key to your success, Don?
Never giving up. Again, I was a C student in high school. I don't really feel like, and I don't mean to degrade myself or anything like that, but I really don't feel like I'm you meet people that are really smart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm really smart. I'm just more like a pit bull. Yeah. I decide I want something, and I have my magic formula. I decide what I want. I get a picture of it, make it really clear. I write down a list of things I need to do to get there, and I execute excellently on that. And that's my formula for success. Even an average person like me can have extraordinary success when you know the 3 steps.
So what's next on the horizon for you?
Well, about 8 or 9 years ago, I had a serendipitous experience. Someone introduced me to a guy whose father was Napoleon Hill's mentor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I had the chance to meet this gentleman, and a real savant, a business savant. And he had started a company that had over 100,000 clubs, a CEO club, and over 100,000 members around the world. And he said to me, Don, I told him, I read the book Think and Grow Rich. Out of that grew my 3-step system. I've helped, 1,000 people, let's say. And he said, everybody around the world needs to know that. And so he said, do you have a book? And I said, no, you might as well be talking Martian to me. I can't write a book. He helped me write a book. And then he helped me to bring my idea, my little system, into an online university. So we created a company called LifeWorks University. And through some pretty ingenious coaching from this guy, I ended up having, like yourself, I have clients on 6 continents. I had students on 6 continents, and really, really proud of that. But I wanted to retire, or at least I thought I wanted to retire and start to collect my pension. And so I had brought on a gentleman that I made the president of the university. He's up in Toronto, brilliant young man. And he helped me to grow that company. He took care of all day-to-day operations, and I allowed him to continue to run that business. I kept the brand, but I allowed him to continue to run that business because he was just so good at it, and people really loved him. And I decided I was going to retire, but I retired the first time at 39 years old. I looked at my bank account, my retirement account, and I said, well, I got plenty of money. Why do I keep doing this? The answer is, you can retire from work, but you can't retire from your purpose. And my purpose is to help people reach their goals and make their dreams come true. So that's what's next for me. I'm just going to keep finding ways to be able, and we may pull this model back out of mothballs and see if we can make it, instead of, a few hundred people, a few 100,000 people around the world that have access to my system.
Well, we talked off air, and unfortunately we didn't get a chance to go through that now. But, one of the biggest challenges with any type of system like this, as far as behavioral change, is reinforcement, and being able to get that reinforcement, because to reprogram ourselves, it takes a lot of work. And so, I'm excited to see what you come up with on this next version, this next evolution, you might say, of bringing this thing back and bringing this to change, because so many people need it. And you'd think that people could, there's hundreds of books out there. There's thousands of books. There's thousands of people coaching and stuff. but there's always this missing gap of people having a system that has the reinforcement. So it's
Yeah, and
interesting.
we did get that handled because in Think and Grow Rich, he talks about something called the mastermind principle. When two or
Yeah.
more minds come together in a spirit of harmony towards a definite purpose, a third, more powerful cosmic mind gets created. And we made sure that we incorporated that in our model. And so people got the support and the encouragement and the coaching and direction that they needed, particularly during those down points. So I would tell people, come to the weekly meeting, sometimes because you need it and sometimes because everybody needs you to be able to tell them about your successes. So they would come with their challenges and they would come with their successes, and it became a community. And I'm still friends with hundreds of people all over the world that their life is now better because of that. My dad said, if you help one other person have a better life, you're a success.
Well, I just have two more questions for you. I think I already know the answer to the first one. What would you do different looking back?
I would seek out partners. One of the things I learned from this mentor of mine 70 years ago, he just died recently, sadly, but he taught me that collaboration and cooperation work better than competition. Yep. And I would do more collaboration. I would work with other, try to find more other amazing people and share the wealth and share the success and share the glory with them, so that they could also expand out into their network and help more people and help more people. The Pay It Forward movie was one of my favorite movies, yeah. Right? Paying it forward. If we just keep paying it or reaching, helping more people up the mountain. One of my dear friends holds the world record for being the oldest man in the world to reach all 7 peaks on the tallest 7 peaks on all 7 continents, Warner Berger. And and that's what he does. That's what he turned 80 at the top of Kilimanjaro. He did Everest at 64 years old, and they flew him back to New York, and Matt Lauer interviewed him the next day.
Wow, that's cool.
So, but that's what he did. He would climb the mountain and he would reach back, and he has a business where he coaches the top C-suite people of the top companies in the world. And he takes them on that experience so that they learn who they are under pressure, under stress, and push the limits and get beyond their own personal limitations. People that are already wildly successful, he pushes them to the next level. And so reaching back or paying it forward, both terms work.
Fantastic. All right. Well, give out that website again so people can find you.
Yeah, doncotefitness.com, DONCOTE fitness.com.
Fantastic. All right. So my last question I ask is of all guests. If you've listened, folks know what's coming. So, in the Western cultures, we have this concept of a bucket list. And in fact, I've been able to interview the bucket list guy, bucketlist.com. His name is Trav Bell. Episode number 60. If you get a chance, it's a hoot. It's a great interview. Incredible guy. Anyway, a bucket list, things, we're going to do before our time on Earth is done. But, in the universe, there's always an opposite of everything. All right. So there's a list out there of things we don't want to do or have no interest in. Now, that list rhymes with bucket and starts with an F, but I'm not going to say that. Okay. So it's the F it list. All right. So, things you just have no interest in doing. So I'll give you an example. So while you're thinking there and your wheels are turning, because you'll never forget this conversation, because most people don't know what an F it list is. So a couple of things that are on my list would be sardines. Nope, not going to do those again. Sorry. And this is not inclusive. I have a little longer list than this. The other one is Lakota Sioux Sweat Lodge. Nope, no thanks. The excessive heat, excessive humidity, excessive drumming, and excessive chanting all combined. No, not doing that again. So what might be a thing or two that's on Don's effort list?
The one thing that looms very, very large for me is I'm not afraid of dying. I'm just afraid of living too long and being incapacitated and having people change my diapers and feed me oatmeal and applesauce. Okay. And so it's the reason why I decided that I would have this physical transformation and eat organically, and we're mostly 100% plant-based now, my wife and I. And so that's the one thing that I never want to do is lose my health again.
Okay.
That's
That's a great one. That's a good one. Anything else that comes to mind?
More love, less arguing. But I gave that up when I met my wife. We never argue. Actually, when we disagree, we're mostly doing belly laughs. So arguing was one of the things that was, my family, when I grew up as kids, there was a lot of arguing so I was trained I'm a really good arguer. I was trained really well by my family, first marriage, second marriage, all that kind of stuff. So no more arguing, never going to do that again. No reason for it. Just love people.
All right. Fantastic. Well, thanks for coming on, Don, and sharing your story and
Thanks
being so
This was a blast.
Being so transparent. Again, my whole purpose on this is to bring good to the world. Spotlight good, and then also just share people's stories. People don't realize what it takes to get to success, and there's a common theme, and it's always that way. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that's what we'll call an episode today. We'll call it a wrap. Please don't forget to stop by the show website, rexandrewshow.com. Don's information's out there, plus all of our guests, and we normally have about 30 to 40 people lined up in the queue. So we have a lot of interesting people coming on, all walks of life, all trades, all interesting things. So please stop by and check that out. And until next time, I'll say the 3 things that I say every single time. Be safe, but be bold, and make it a great day.